going. Thank you everybody for coming for Melanin, Melanin mental health. Trying to put the Melanin mental health when I have a community discussion talking about being black and the intersection of being black and mental health. And that's a lot of our experience, as people with melanin, as as black people. So before I get into all that, I definitely want to introduce a powerful panel here. Starting out with Dr. Danny. I used to work with Dr. Danny Side here. I've seen Danny working with a variety of populations. Not only that, apply a type of care that I feel like can only come from a perspective of, like I said, somebody who's had the experience that we have as it relates to working with our people, And me personally, knowing that Danny comes from an open like me, I know that she kind of has that, not only that clinical lens, but also that cultural lens, So that's something definitely that I always respect about Danny, bringing that to the table. And blessed to have you here today. So thank you, Danny. Thank you, Dr. Danny. I have Chris here, marriage and family therapist. Chris supervised nonprofits before. You've been on the front lines, even now, as a clinician. Wide array of different experience. Me and Chris always have just different, always having those conversations about, we worked at organizations where we were the only two black men. That's actually how I met Chris. We were trying to go for the same position. And I think they were kind of trying to get like a black person, trying to get a black man specifically. And me and Chris was, sitting in the hallway and everybody else, it was a group interview, right? Yeah. And then everybody told everybody else go away. And it was just me and Chris in the hallway till like 8 p.m. at night. We just started chopping it up, right? Even though we were going against each other, we just started chopping it up. And it ended up hiring both of us. Definitely, through the years, been able to, like I said, have a lot of conversations about not only being a black clinician in these spaces where we the only people who look like us, but also, what does that look like for us providing care to people who come from our community, right? That's going to look a little different than, being honest, somebody who's coming from Beverly Hills or Piedmont, providing care for somebody who comes from our community. So definitely, like I said, happy to have you here, man, and blessed. Came from out of town actually to speak, so I appreciate that. And also I have, Shantae Atkins here, an educator. Shantae has worked in a lot of different communities from LA to San Diego to Chicago. Not only that, she's a gospel singer. And Shantae has a lot of, she's gonna sing at the end. She has a song that she's gonna sing, so definitely, check her out, stream her music. She has a lot of, not only just gospel music, but she talks about mental health. And Shantae talks about, how, the intersection of, using her spirituality and using her faith to kind of, cope with different mental health struggles, right? So I always, appreciate that about Shantae's music. Again, it's a blessing to have you here, and thank you, Shantae. Before we get into it, just kind of want to introduce some of the topics, see if there's any questions, any comments. The hopes is that, it's not just us talking to you. The hopes is that it's us talking amongst each other. Don't feel forced, but please, if you have anything to say on any of these topics, I really appreciate it. Us having, like I said, a community discussion rather than just us talking to you guys, if you got an opinion, please allow me to pass the mic so you can jump in. But we'll start out, of course, with the panel, giving their views, giving their, clinical expertise, and personal expertise, right, and other native people. Also I want you guys to jump in on every question or, whatever your perspectives are on these different topics. First we're just going to talk about, like I said, the experience of being black in America, in California, and how that experience, may vary from the experiences of others, right? And how that experience at times kind of impacts not only the way we think, not only our development, but our mental health, right? A lot of times we carry a lot of trauma with us that we may not even realize, right? Generational trauma, right? Inter-household trauma, trauma that we get from our neighborhoods, that we don't even realize due to the strength and resilience and the power of us, individually and collectively, as a community. Sometimes you push through these things without realizing that we're carrying these burdens. So definitely talking about that. I don't know if you guys are familiar with W.B. Du Bois. It's been it was an interesting point. It's been 100 years, and yet we're still, talking about some of the same concepts. But W.B. Du Bois used to talk about double consciousness and having a white veil, and talking about how, at the house, in your neighborhood, being black and being able to kind of, coexist in your own space and then having to go out into the world, right? We only 10% of America, so a lot of times when we go to our professional spaces, we have to have the ability to have double consciousness and the code switch and, kind of talking about what that does, right? In terms of our mental health. What does that do to just, our minds on an ongoing, having to constantly have that double consciousness, right? Constantly having to put on that white veil in order to be successful in a lot of, different fields and industries, right? And then coming home to our neighborhood and then having to, right, go back to, our true fabric. So we'll talk about that. And then just in general, I just want to get other people's opinions in terms of what you guys feel like is pertinent in the Black community with mental health issues. You guys feel like, are some of the issues that maybe not necessarily stigmatized, but, trouble us the most right now, right? And just, kind of opening it up to that. Also kind of just talking about specific aspects of mental health that affect Black men specifically, and then also talking about specific aspects of mental health that affect Black women specifically. So yeah, those are the topics that you can see here on the paper. Does anybody have any questions, any comments, anything, any thoughts before we jump on in? No? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and jump on in. And so we have about 15 minutes scheduled for each section. It probably won't be 15 minutes. It most likely be, maybe half that, but definitely, just make sure we get the time allotted just in case, we start to have a rich conversation. So let me start out here kind of with the topic I was talking about of just in general being Black in America and how that can a lot of times look different from people who aren't Black, right? We have different experiences. We have different stories to tell. We have different narratives, right? We have a different way of life. We have a different culture, right? A lot of times in our families, we might have relationships with extended families, grandmas, cousins, aunties, uncles, so forth and so on, right? So there's a lot of different aspects that kind of make up who we are. Not only that, but we're in a society where a lot of times our pigmentation does, mark in terms of what kind of experience we can have in certain spaces, if that makes sense, right? I want to start here by kind of asking Chris, how do you feel in terms of what I'm talking about right now? This experience of being Black in America, what kind of impact do you feel that this can have on our mental health, either individually or collectively?
Thank you, Sean. I just want to thank you again for inviting me here to do this. It means a lot to me to be able to participate, be a part of the community. As a Black man, as a biracial man who comes from a Black father and Armenian mother, it's a really important thing for me to be able to share in this conversation to help bring more awareness into this topic. Just an idea of how being Black in America impacts your mental health. I think about my own journey as a therapist and as a consumer of mental health. Someone who's experienced trauma in the household, who's come from individuals that struggle with drug use, alcoholism. And it's interesting, as I'm thinking about it now, a big part of where I'm at in this journey in terms of mental health is understanding mental health is about having presence of mind, peace, trust in yourself, trust in those around you. And when thinking about what that's like while being Black, what that's like to be Black and to have that trust, and what comes with the trust, the vulnerability, the companionship, the connection to the community. And it's not just a connection to the community that we're in right now together, but within the greater community of the United States. And you think about all that history, all the barriers that we experience, and how does that make us feel at times maybe other, different, depending on where you are, who you're with, workplace setting, social setting, maybe having a sense that you don't belong. That's something that we can't really shake, we can't really escape because we wear that on our skin. And we have an awareness of this. And it's a blessing that that awareness has increased in society overall, but it still has a very, very, very long way to go. And I think because of that reality, when you think about what it is to be Black and how that impacts our mental health, there's an additional strain on us that's difficult for other people to fully understand and appreciate. And I think for us as a people, it's important that we honor that we understand that, and we take the time like we are today to be able to address that and have a conversation around it. It's been something that hasn't been done enough. I'm very proud of my friend Joe for taking the step to do this kind of thing. It definitely deserves a hand of applause, for sure. For sure. yeah, just thinking about, if I just think about my father and his experience, he was born in the late 30s. And if he was alive today, and you were to see me doing this and in this conversation, he would have little to no understanding of what we're talking about. And I say this because it's important for us to have this understanding, because I saw how he suffered in a lot of ways unnecessarily. And I think if we as individuals aren't experiencing that suffering, chances are we know someone that is. And there's no more need to have to suffer in silence in that way. And I think that's one thing that happens a lot with our society, with Black people, and when it comes to mental health as well. As we're having this conversation, I think it'd be great, like Cheryl was saying, if anyone has any thoughts, questions, or whatever, to kind of engage with us too. One of my hopes in doing this is to be able to help bridge this topic with as many people as I can.
Appreciate that. You know, two things that you said I just want to touch on. One, the last thing you said was just about not having spaces, not having community. You know, a lot of times, you know, probably like every day I'll be on the phone with my cousin and we'll talk a lot about how like it's 2024. You know, what I mean by that is that like a lot of what used to be organic community for us is no longer, you know, is going away in a lot of different ways, right? You know, a lot of times, you know, we don't, like when we were younger, you know, you might see kids playing outside and just naturally meeting through the neighborhood. It's less of that going on, right? A lot of times you'll have families get together for family reunions, you know, every summer. It's less of that going on, right? If you really want to, you can get your food sent to you. You can work from home. You can really isolate yourself, right, in the world that we're in now. And I don't know that it necessarily helps us as Black people, because I think we're people who come from community. And I think that we need that community to a certain extent, right? To a high extent, right? And on different levels, right? On a family level, on, you know, even bigger than family level, like I said, on a communal level, right? So that's something that you said that stood out to me too. Just increasing the awareness, right? Even beyond that, of Black folks, but just other people also having awareness of maybe experiences that they're not aware of. Sometimes we think it's common sense, but Dr. Daniel sat in meetings with me with, you know, with people who, you know, sometimes they're like, oh my God, I can't believe that, you know, that's something that their client said this. I can't believe that's something that they're going through as a Black person. And you almost in your mind say, wow, really? Like this person from California, you're not aware of the fact that like people go through this? So yeah, definitely, you gotta increase the awareness for sure. Any thoughts just in terms of being Black in America and the experience that comes with that and how that can impact us? Anybody?
I just want to say events like this is really important, I think, for you know, melanated people like us, and I appreciate y'all doing stuff like this, because we live in a, you know, it's a European American culture where, on a large scale, what we go through and our needs and the knowledge that we should have, need to have, isn't really put out there. So yeah, just want to say I appreciate y'all, and events like this are important for us. You know, should, you know, happen more often on a larger scale, but it starts somewhere, and yeah, just appreciate y'all.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that. Yeah, any thoughts just in terms of, like I said, just the experience of being Black in contrast to others?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for showing that. For me, I just think, when I think of being Black in America, I think of resilience and how that's like the main protective factor for us. But also, I think it's also been a deal as well in regards to us really having to deal with the things we have to deal with. Being resilient, right, is to face adversity, right? And we've done that for centuries. But at the same time, I think since we are so resilient naturally and just through community, we don't really acknowledge stuff that's really there, right? And I know we'll probably get into this more with some other questions, but you know, in our community, it's big for us to say, go to church, pray about it, right? Talk to your grandma, all of that type of because we are resilient. So that's the main protective factor, and that's the main thing that we hold close to us. And it's one of our main strengths, don't get me wrong. But also I think there's a lot of things underneath that. It's layers and layers and layers of stuff, that I think we have to talk about more, and that we have to actually face more and deal with more. So spaces like this, it's almost necessary for our survival, I feel like. But since we are so resilient, right, just keep going, which we do, and we do it really well. But at the same time, I think we have to start talking about it and acknowledging it and move away from mental health being so taboo in the Black community. Yeah, I have more to say, but I'll leave it at that.
Appreciate that. Yeah, something that I'm thinking about is just, also, I was just mentioning, I was 2024, just how the experience of being Black has, I'll say, changed and improved, but at the same time remained the same. You know how they say the more things change, the more it stays the same. So, I'm just seeing, different people, different generations in the crowd. Okay, if I ask you a question,
Sure.
what was your experience coming up? You from here in Bay? Where you from?
I grew up in Florida.
Okay, you grew up in Florida. Okay, you spent some time in Florida. What was your experience like as somebody who, is African American, who was Black coming up in Florida? Did you come from a community where it was mostly Black people, or did you come from a community where it was white people? Could you tell that there was a contrast in terms of your experience? And if so, how did that impact your mind coming up? How did it make you think about how to navigate this world?
Well, first of all, my name is Isaac. I grew up in Pensacola, Florida, down in the Panhandle, 65 miles from the Alabama line. I grew up in the era of George Wallace, Lester Maddox, Bull Connors, all governors of different Arkansas, Alabama, and Florida. I grew up in a mixed neighborhood, but yet at the age of 7 years old, I experienced an homemade bomb sit on our front doorsteps, and throughout the time that segregated schools, but yet the experience of my dad waking us up and getting us out of the house because of the bomb, didn't realize the trauma that was there. But I have to give credit to my parents and how I was raised. There was 3 girls and 3 girls and 3 boys. As a Black man, I've been in the military. I am a drug and alcohol counselor. Dealt with some some things that devastate. At that time, didn't realize how devastating it was. But as we grew up, my dad and mom had the teaching, and neither one of them graduated from the 3rd grade, but they had wisdom. And that got us through a lot, looking at a lot of things. But as a Black man, as of today, I'm blessed. I'm 81 young. And seen a lot, done a lot. But we, as Black men, have gotten away from a lot of things from our elders.
The foundation of what we truly are.
That's right, absolutely. Growing up in church, the elderly man took the young Black men and taught them how to become a man. We've gotten away from that nowadays. This is beautiful. This is my first time visiting with you. but I am involved in quite a few things that has to do with the black men.
Just so everybody knows, that's his health and wellness cards there on the table. We came in early before everybody else. Approached me real nice. Said, "Hey brother, you mind if I put these cards on the table, man? I think it would kind of go with the topic is today." I said, "Absolutely, absolutely." So yeah, just everybody knows he also has a wealth and wellness brand that he's promoting.
Thank you. Yes, I do health and wellness products. Been on these products 15 years. And as I said, between the products and the master above, I am what I am. And you name it, I've been there, seen it, done it. But I'm thankful to being here today to share with you.
Thank you. Yeah, you kind of touched on a lot of kind of like what I was insinuating earlier, just in terms of how like now we may not necessarily have like a homemade bomb put on our doorstep, right? As black people, we might not necessarily have to. Depending on where you're at, but typically that's not something that would be a part of our story today. However, there's systematic bombs, right, that are placed at our doorstep every day. That metaphorically speaking kind of had the same effect, So I really appreciate that, brother. I like to say, my mom used to talk a lot about fellowshipping, when I was young. I like to say, it's important for us to fellowship, that's how we organize, and, support for us to organize, that's how we build, So definitely. Before we kind of move on from this topic, I wanted to ask you, say specifically, kind of give me more of a, LA Southern California perspective, even though I do kind of feel like it's a larger umbrella in terms of California. But what was your experience as a black woman, or maybe not even your experience, you can just talk to the experience of being black in Southern California, because that does have its own caveat, Southern California has its diversity, but it looks different from the Bay, And yeah, do you feel like that as a black woman, the way you navigate the world was impacted? Yeah, by your experiences coming up as a black woman in Southern California. My bad.
I was gonna talk a little loud. Hey y'all. I would say that being raised in LA specifically, like more so Inglewood, all of that kind of area, it's not a lot of black people. It's a lot more Latinos, and that group of people. And so what I've encountered, I will say, is a lot of discrimination within even like the context of the black and brown people, where we're kind of supposed to find safety or comfort or understanding or compassion, all of that, and I didn't find that growing up. And so I would say, just if I'm speaking to that specific experience, it was a little bit difficult because yes, I have a black family and I have a huge family, right? But when you go outside of that in education or entertainment or wherever you go in the community, you don't find a lot of people that look like us. So I had to kind of find groups or, different events and stuff like that. And it really wasn't a lot until I went to San Diego, where I saw like poetry, black poetry. And I saw a larger African community. I saw a lot more people embrace the different background things that, or the different cultural things that made us who we are. So whether that's church or just getting more in touch with where you come from, what country you come from, if you can track your history all the way back. I know some people who have, but I didn't. But it helped me to feel a little bit more comfortable, but I didn't have that like growing up in LA and Inglewood like until I got to undergrad. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different dynamic down there, especially between the particular populations that you're talking about. In LA, that's definitely a thing. I know I'll be down there just talking about how I made these different cultures, and be like, "Dang, you really appreciate other cultures for real?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm from the Bay, right? She was right around everybody." And, they wouldn't necessarily feel the same because they grew up in areas where they had friends who were mistreated at the store. They had friends who were, mistreated in the neighborhoods and, had a different dynamic. And I'll be honest with you, even as much as I do love, I'm like Mitzi Hustle says, I hate anybody, I just really love us, you know what I mean? As much as I do love everybody, I will be honest, that's why I do have a problem with the term POC. I'm not a big fan of POC. I'm not. Why? For the same exact reasons that we're kind of talking about here. Because struggle is different. And we live in a caste system that's based on melanin, no matter how you slice it. So, you know, depending on where you from, you know, you fall on this caste system, a lot of times you can determine what your experience looks like. So I don't like the version of everybody's experience. I don't like to be called a person of color, Malcolm fault, so that I wasn't called, you know what I'm saying, color. You know, I feel like there's differences in everybody's struggle and everybody's story, and those differences deserve time, deserve attention. You know, whether you're talking about our community or somebody else's. But not only that, but I find that a lot of times you can be like a hallmark of struggle in a lot of different ways. So they'll take certain, I don't want to say campaigns, but there's certain things that they'll fly under the flag of Black struggle, right? And sometimes don't have anything to do with it. So I give you an example in terms of like affirmative action. Something that was supposed to be meant for Black people, right? Something that was supposed to be meant to help us specifically. When you look at the numbers, we weren't the ones who was actually getting help. You know, it was actually a lot of white women, I believe, getting help. So with that being said, you know, it's a lot of times things that they'll, like I said, attach our culture to. We can kind of be the face of fighting through oppression and being resilient, and then the whole time, you know, we're not even the ones who actually receiving that help. So yeah, definitely. Thank you for saying that, Tay. Thank you for saying that. You know, I was speaking earlier about W.D. Du Bois and the double consciousness and the white veil, and really, it don't matter what field you're in. The higher and higher you go as a professional, is the less and less the room's gonna look like this, right? The higher and higher you go, you might be the only one in the room. I know I feel like that for me. I know I feel like that for you in certain environments. You as well. You know, I've been in these environments with each one of you at some point, right? So definitely, you know, it requires a certain amount of, how can I say this, cultural security. Not only that, but also being knowledgeable enough in other people's cultures in order to be successful in that of other people's cultures, and then still be able to operate at a throne, right? What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is I know when I come into my job every Friday morning, I might come in with my slides on, my headphones, and my do-rag, but then I know once I get to the office and where people can see me, all they're gonna see is the slacks. I'm gonna have my nice cut, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna have my dress shoes on, I'm gonna present myself in a certain kind of way. Why? Because to them, that might look, you know, inappropriate, or it might look down upon me in terms of my ability as a clinician, right? Or it could be something as simple as, you know, certain hairstyles. I used to have dreads for a long time, you know? And that was something that kind of got me judged in a lot of ways. You know, a lot of people look at me with dreads and be like, oh, he's just another black dude, you know, from the hood or whatnot, before actually speaking with me and kind of, you know, understanding, you know, my mind. So, I kind of wanted to have a discussion about that in terms of having a code switch. And sometimes, you know, what that can do, right, to the mind. There's certain people I feel like who are really good with, like, finding a medium to where that medium is, you know, it's naturally who they are, and they can operate as that in these other spaces. I give you an example. Growing up, going to St. Leo's, like the Coogler family, a lot of times I'll watch Ryan Coogler do interviews, and I like how he presents himself. That is Ryan, you know what I'm saying? He's not acting like anybody else. He's not trying to, you know, chuck and jive for the folks. You catch Ryan going down the street in Richmond, he's gonna be the same way you see him on the interview. You know, he kind of found that middle point. But for me, I'll be honest, that middle point is hard for me. I sometimes find myself just going full blast, my regular open self, or, you know, having to kind of, you know, conduct myself in a more, you know, manner that I guess is more conducive to our society. So, yeah, kind of getting into my question, I wanted to ask, again, we all have this common shared experience amongst, even from being a student, right? If you know, how you go up as a student from undergrad to grad to being a doctorate, we all this experience of having a code switch and things of that nature. you specifically, Dr. Danny, how do you feel your experience, or not even your experience, you could just say this in the mental health field in general with Black professionals, how do you feel like we navigate this? And, you know, you can talk specifically about your experience navigating this as well.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. For me, it was really hard because I am like Oakland down, like all the way. Like I represent Oakland to the fullest. And I realized when I went to grad school, my grad school was in San Francisco. And I remember the first day I got there and I looked around. My first thought was a lot of us like, how many Black people was here? But right. Luckily I wasn't. It was a handful of us. And then there's that, and there's a handful of us still within the big space, right? So that was that. And for me, like we talked about earlier, community is key. I always look for like community, and that can be a dynamic, just me and another person. That can be me and a small group of people. That can be me and however many people. But I always look for connection and community. And so for me, when it comes to, well, let me just kind of explain a little bit what double consciousness means. Because a lot of you may not actually know what that is. It is having to operate in two different social realities. The social reality of being Black, and then the social reality of how you're perceived by white people, right? So we are constantly in, by nature, by default, this double consciousness, right, of how you're perceived, right? So even I know for me personally, and I know as a woman, right, and as a Black woman, as a Black man, it can be different. But for me, sometimes I would even be conscious of, let me not walk in this store with this scarf and these glasses on and this mask. That's the word I gotta say where I go. A mask and glasses because they might think I'm trying to steal or something. You know, so it's just that those little things that we automatically do and have to do that white people don't have to worry about. And so, for me, in spaces that I worked in, first and foremost, psychologists only make up 4% of psychologists in the world. 4%. And so I worked in a huge healthcare system. I don't want to say the name, so we all know. But I worked there, and I had an experience before where I was carrying around one of my books. I was a grad student, and it was my African American psychology class, and it was a white supervisor, and he saw my book. African American psychology. What's the difference? Isn't that the same as all psychology? And me, at this time, this was like my first practicum, so I'm like, it was like my first experience in that space with something like that. And I looked at him, and I'm glad I did mature a little bit, but I said no. And I said, no, it's not the same. It's not the same. It's different. Our psychology and our world is not the same. And, you know, he kind of puffed up a little bit, and then I had people check in with me after they saw that interaction, because he did this in front of people. And it was another Black girl, and then it was one of my Latino friends. And then they were taken back by it, and they felt something about that too. And we debriefed and we talked about it, and I wanted him to know that that wasn't okay. I wanted him to know that that wasn't okay, and I wanted him to know that that's the problem. You know, but white people have the privilege to not have to think about those things, right? Oh, it's the same. No, it's not. So if you think it's the same, then why are we assessed differently? Why are behaviors and our thoughts and how we act assessed on a different scale, right? Because if it was the same, then we wouldn't even be here. There wouldn't be no issue.
Racism wouldn't be a thing.
It wouldn't be a thing. So,
But that's the I don't see color. That's going down that area.
yeah, the I don't see color against
I don't see color. We're the same.
the
Right?
white veil. The veil is like you're looking at a mirror. And guess who is the dictators of the veil? White people, right? They dictate not only them and how they behave, but also what's normal. The standard was to normalize in regards to how humans are supposed to think, how humans are supposed to behave, how humans are supposed to feel, right? And it is impossible for it to be the same based on our history, right? So that's just a little bit of some of the, and I've had several little other instances like that, but that one is just etched in my mind because it was one of the first ones. And, yeah, but since then, I've always been mostly, probably the only, if not like one or two or three, Black people within the spaces I work in, right? Which is why this is very important for us to be doing this work, and for us, the community, you guys, to see faces that look like you, so we can normalize this experience.
Definitely, like you said, normalizing seeing faces, right? Normalizing seeing Black therapists and just seeing Black professionals in general. I feel like right now, in what we would say the hood, but a lot of times in the culture right now, it's like this whole having a 9 to 5 is not cool kind of like thing going on, you know? That's why I feel like it's even more important to see Black lawyers. It's more important to see Black engineers. It's more important to see Black therapists. So kids coming up and know that, like, okay, yeah, I can have this, I can have a good life, right? I got this level of lifestyle. Yeah, I'm getting a job, you know, and going to school. There ain't nothing wrong with it, you know. Definitely, so I definitely feel like it's really important. But going back to what you were saying, just in terms of, you know, that experience, that's doesn't surprise me, but it's just real interesting, right? It's just not, like Chris was saying earlier, just to not have any awareness of the idea that there's other kind of people who have a different kind of way of life, who may, because of that different way of life, have different perspectives, is what we say, oh, this man is crazy, right? But it's reality. It's what we live through, you know, every day, right? There's many people with melanin. You know, I wanted to, you know, just take a moment, if it's okay to put you on the spot, kind of ask you your opinion. Yeah, man, I want to ask you, bro, right here, man. One of my mentors right here, I want to ask you your opinion on, just what we're talking about right now, you know, just about having to, because you're another person who I worked with, who I feel like, man, you so smooth as the other side of a pillow, you know, and, you know, because of that, you able to operate, you know what I'm saying, with the others, you know, and also with us, you know what I mean, you know, so you're able to, you know, just be you in all these different spaces, whereas me, I feel like I could be a little bit more, I don't know, I guess I could wear my urbanness on my sleeve a little bit. So I'll be honest, I looked up to people like you, like Joe, who just, again, had that medium down pat. And you could tell, and had it for years, probably decades. And you just moving, you know, through life in this manner. But anyway, I just wanted to, yeah, man, if you don't mind, give me your view on just having to navigate these spaces. You've been doing it for years as a Black man, as a Black professional, clinician who's, you know, looked up to.
I knew there'd be a price to pay for setting up. I'll apologize. No, thanks, Shel. And it's a pleasure working with you. I work with Dr. Danny over there as well, and I'm so proud of the two of you. Having to balance that, it's tiring. You know, worked for the same major institution at a corporation, like the two of you. And I had good mentors. Joe, you mentioned Joe Maddox, and I modeled a lot of things from him. He's always calm. And he went through some things too. Dr. Danny, I won't even ask you who that might have been. Since we know some of the same people. Don't get me started there. Before I started with this organization, there was a female psychologist who had been in the field for a very long time. Black. Dr. Papillon, Juanita Papillon. And just a real role model there too. And so I learned, I modeled from the elders. I guess I'm kind of an elder now, but they were elders to me and modeled after that. But it does get tired, and you have to do that back and forth. But I think holding on to who you are, it's a state of mind. And that's how, for me, I'm able to kind of balance it because I refuse to lose myself. You know, I'm proud of who I am as a black man. You know, and knowing our history, our resilience, and if you know who you really are, the things that you've achieved, we're not boastful. So we've created a lot of things that a lot of people around the world use. We just don't boast about it, but it's, I think it's okay for us to say a little bit about that. So I'm not gonna hold this and get into professor mode here, but I used to teach a little bit too, so I try to catch myself. But yeah, I think not losing who you are, staying true to yourself, and staying true to the culture. There's no way, if you know our history, that you can never be ashamed of who you are. Not if you know our real history. So I'm very proud of that. And I refuse to let anyone take that away. You know, so yeah, I have to code switch. I have to do all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to do it to the point where I have to lose who I am. So we'll go on.
Definitely important. I hope you don't mind me saying it's something I respect about Jonell. Jonell got to a point at one point where he told people, I want to work with my community. I'm not interested in working with other people. I want to work with my community. And basically made it jump in, you know? I sat back and saw that. You can do that? I mean, you can do that. Tell me, Jonell, hey, you can do that. He's like, shit, you asked for it. You know, so definitely, I can see that in you in terms of refusing to you know, to lose who you are, you know. And not only that, but, you know, whatever you receive from the people who came before you, I can see that you make it a point to, like, you know, try to grab us and give it to us too. You know what I mean? Kind of continue that community and continue that cycle and, you know, continue that knowledge, right? Definitely. But yeah, I wanted to ask you, I'll tell you what's the bathroom. I'm gonna come back and I was gonna say about code switcher, so we'll come back to that. But yeah, just to transition a little bit, wanted to talk a little bit about trauma. We were kind of talking about it earlier, talking just about the different kind of traumas that we go through as a people, right? Because it's different levels of trauma. We go through trauma within our households, we go through trauma in the neighborhood, we go through trauma like I said, collectively, culturally speaking, right? You know, seeing somebody like Oscar Grant go through what he went through, or seeing somebody like, you know, we can go down the list, right? These are what we call collective cultural traumas, right? Because they impact us, and they impact where we move, you know? I remember we used to go over to Frisco back in the day. I don't know if y'all used to do that, but we used to go over to Frisco. Hey, you remember? We used to catch Bart every year, and Oscar, you know, what happened to Oscar Grant happened to him, and after that, it was kind of like, who doing that anymore? You know what I'm saying? We're trying to go see the fireworks in Frisco. So we had these cultural experiences that impacted the whole culture, right? And leave us with trauma. And that happens, again, on an individual level, happens on, you know, also on a neighborhood level. You know, a lot of times growing up in the neighborhoods that we grow up in, we experience things that aren't necessarily normal, but they are normal, right? And it impacts us in a way. I think actually you were just speaking to this, Dr. Dan. You were speaking to the fact how a lot of times we would just keep pushing, right? We just keep pushing, not really taking the time to really recognize and even realize how a lot of this stuff impacts us, right? How it impacts you to, you know, open your door and see substance abuse, right? How it impacts you to, you know, have to not only be in areas where violence occurs, but to witness it in most cases and scenarios, you know? A lot of times whether it's just going to Juneteenth or whether it be back in the day, you know, Festival by the Lake, or whether it be Harry John, all of these, you know, got shut down due to violence, right? If you're not aware. So we also have to witness, right? We also have to witness these different, like I said, these different traumas. I know me personally, like, I don't even like going out to areas where there's too many people. Why? Because I'm from Oakland. I tell people all the time, you know, I got that trauma, you know. So like, for instance, like a hello stranger downtown, or it's like a shotgun kind of situation. It's just a bunch of people, and I know for a fact there's people in there, weapons. I don't want to go, because I've seen things happen to people in scenarios and places just like this, just not this, but just like that, right? And that's trauma. My cousin come from out of town. I took him there. I love. He's like, hey, boy, it's straight. He's like, it's cool, man. I like this. I got a little something going. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. We about to leave in 30. You know what I'm saying? It's what you don't know. This day party is done. So it's that's the trauma that I'm carrying from being alone. To the naked eye. Oh yeah, this is cool. It's nice. So just talking about, and then like I said, that household trauma. We have these household traumas that we go through even within our families, right? In terms of what we witness, right? And sometimes we get parentified at ages that's way younger, right, than we're supposed to. A lot of times we're having to witness things at a young age from, whether it be our parents, whether it be, older siblings that, we shouldn't witness. And a lot of times this causes us to have what we call in our field core beliefs, right? In terms of like how we see the world, how we see other people in the world. And these are survival skills for us, right? You might find like a little kid who's in an unsafe environment, after a while, not being able to tell what's safe, what's not safe, he might just tell himself the world ain't safe, right? That might be his core belief. He might just carry himself through the rest of, his childhood into his adult years with his core belief the world ain't safe. Until he gets older and realizes, wait a minute, I don't actually have to be, I'm not in that environment anymore, right? I don't have to be in this mind frame. It's not serving me anymore, right? It's not helping me survive, but, that's usually when they come into us and we work on those cognitions, right? But we see this all the time. Right? So I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the trauma. We'll come back to you about the code switching, or the little code switching question. So just wanted to touch a little bit on the trauma and ask you, Danny, as a psychologist, what are your thoughts on how much trauma experienced on these different levels by us in early childhood? How do you feel, and within the household as well, how do you feel like that affects our mental health? On whatever level you want to talk about it, on the individual level or collective level.
I'll talk a little bit more about the individual level. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about in regards to things we see that we normalize as not normal. And it starts within the household, right? It starts in childhood, and it's something called social learning theory. You learn what you see in your environment, right? Whether it's good or whether it's bad. And then that ends up influencing how you think, right? How you feel and what you believe and how you behave ultimately, right? And so sometimes not sometimes, a lot of the time we actually don't categorize it as trauma, right? Because it seems normal, right? Because it's what you see mom do, what you see dad do, what you see grandma do, right? Even if it's violence, right? Even if it's substance use, even if it's whatever it is, it's seen as normal, right? And that actually, like Shell was saying, it creates a core belief, right? And so that core belief could be, I can't trust people, right? Or I don't trust people, or I'm not good enough, right? Or I'm not enough, right? Or I'm useless, or whatever that core belief might be that you internalize due to your external environment. So it's really important for us to catch these things early, right? And to name it what it is. It's trauma, right? A lot of the times, if we don't see it as a violent act, so to speak, right? It's not really seen as trauma, right? There's trauma is all different forms of abuse. It's not just physical abuse, sexual abuse, things that are more blatant, right? It's emotional abuse, verbal abuse, right? The way somebody might talk to you, whether it's a parent, a grandparent, however, those things are trauma as well, right? And those things more so holds on to how someone internalizes things at the end of the day. And so it's important for us to acknowledge that and see how it carries on. Because when you're around like 7 years old, that's around the age you start to really figure out and have an idea of who you are, right? So just imagine all of these things happening up until 7, right? And even after that, obviously, too, you know, adolescence, that's a whole nother story, but you start to really develop your core beliefs around that age, right? And then it only adds on to that, right? Whether it turns around and you get into a different environment. But if your environment doesn't change, your thought about yourself and your thought about the world, your thought about others is not gonna change, because core beliefs is what you think about yourself, what you think about other people, and also how you perceive the world as well. So it's important for us to talk about these things and really understand just how much our environment during childhood really does affect not only obviously our family dynamics, but how we see ourselves and how we grow in relationships with other people, right? And this is in the work environment, this is in any type of environment where you are in community and in connection and any type of relationship, right? And so, yeah, that's what I would say about that. Am I touching on anything? Am I missing anything?
Just on everything, absolutely. Like, you know, let's make the point, I start making notes, because I forget. One of the things that you mentioned that was a really good point, is just talking about how like we assess for trauma and how like others assess for trauma. You know what I mean? That was a real good point, because a lot of times in our field, they're looking for like a soldier who came from war, or they're looking for a DV situation, like these real specific things, right? And then they'll, you know, diagnose us under PTSD. But coming from our community, it's like, I might have just saw somebody get shot. That's trauma. You know, I might have witnessed, you know, something that's, you know, horrendous. So that's a good point. It's not always necessarily a direct violence, or it might even be no violence involved at all. It could just be the trauma of, you know, what we're experiencing. So that was a really good point that you made, just in the differences of not only the way we view trauma, how we experience trauma, but as clinicians, how we even assess it is different. And then another point you made was just, or made me think about, was just like the gift and the curse of the struggle. And what I mean by that is because we go through what we go through, makes us like, I feel like a stronger people. I feel like we have more resilience, in my opinion. And I feel like you can see that in so many different ways, like just the strength and the resilience that, you know, a lot of our moms and grandmas haven't had. But what comes with that is like, yeah, it's a curse, because there's like a blind eye that's turned towards it, right? Not only by us, but also, you know, by the larger society. So I definitely can kind of see the gift and the curse in that. I wanted to ask you, Chris, something that we talked about before, even just, you know, with coworkers, is just about how socioeconomics impacts people's experience, right? And how that ends up impacting people's, not only your experience in terms of your mental health, but your overall experience, right? In terms of your development. So yeah.
Yes.
Hold on. I'm gonna come back to you.
Can I touch on what you just
Please do.
My name is David.
What's going on, David?
So my mom was the disciplinary in the household, and she did all the teaching, the whipping, and all this. So a lot of trauma come from that, and it became generational. So as we grew, my siblings, we did the same thing that was done to us, to our kids. So we had to learn how to not become trauma, because mental health was a thing of, it wasn't no mental health. You had to be tough, especially as a boy. You had to be tough. You can't cry. You can't have no emotions. So we carried that trauma with us for a long time. And as of today, I was married twice. This is my son, he's 12. So the thing is that there's attitudes that you have to deal with that today that you couldn't do the same way that you did with my first marriage with my kids. 'Cause I disciplined my kids, my first set of kids.
And you learned along the way.
I learned
That's what
along
my
the way.
father tell me.
And I didn't have no therapy to teach me how to do this. I had to learn through my kids. Like, this is not the way it goes. You can't do this. And the way the laws changed, it also made you, like, if you do that to your child, you will go to jail, you will be locked up. So you have to learn these things.
That's such a good point. I appreciate you saying that. Definitely. A lot of the things that we learn sometimes are almost like cyclical traumas, right? That we didn't repeat, right? And it takes for us to have a certain level of consciousness to realize, oh, shoot, the impact this is having on me, or the impact this has on me, is going to have on my kids. And I don't want this experience for my kids, so I got to kind of switch up. I'm often talking about that with my cousin. A lot of times we're talking about, the good and the bad. There's so much good that comes with the way we was raised specifically in my family, especially like West Indian people. But then there's certain aspects where we like, I don't know about that though, bro. You're like, yeah, bro, I don't know about that. We'd never do that. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even see you there, Mom. So, a lot of times, it is important, right, to look at the trauma that we experience within our households and then assess, the good and say, okay, I want to make sure I pass this down to my next generation. And to look at the bad and say, okay, maybe this was a traumatic experience. And I'm still thinking about it as an adult that I don't want my kids to have to think about when they're 30, 40, right?
Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to speak on that point. First, I wanted to give this generation credit for actually recognizing mental health in a different way. I'm a person born in the 60s, raised in the 70s, so this thing was looked at very differently. It was taboo. It was mental health was you're retarded. That it was no line in between mental health. It wasn't on panels like this. It was either, like Danielle said, be resilient and move on from it and learn how to deal with it. There was no, there was therapy, but again, there was taboo, and certain mental health was considered you were either crazy or not crazy. So this generation is bringing the mental health issue to the forefront more than my generation, and also with culture. Raising in the 60s and 70s in Oakland, and between Oakland and Compton like I was, there was culture here. The stores on the corner were owned by black people. We could go places, we could have fun. And then all of a sudden the 80s dropped and crack dropped here, and a 60s baby looked at Oakland and said, what happened? Now, and then gentrification of neighborhoods, now they're coming, they left our neighborhoods when we moved in, and now they're moving back and buying our property. So us 60s and 70s baby have different generational issues that you guys have, but one good, we have our differences of opinions and things about people that were raised in different times. But what we can agree is there's a big problem, and mental health issues definitely need to be put on the forefront, and we need to recognize our own generational trauma and what we hand down to our children. And now that we have ways to deal with it, there are more health organizations that recognize mental health, where you can actually, like Kaiser and different places, whatever you have, that will pay for it for you. It used to be you had to pay $200-300 for therapy. So this generation, definitely, I applaud this generation for standing up and saying this is a real thing. This is something that we're not crazy. We're professionals. We work, in the society, and we need help. So again, that my thing was applauding this generation for standing up and saying no more. We have to stop, and we have to address the issues. My generation is still holding on to how we felt in the 60s and 70s, and we have to continue to look at society as it's changing, and that's trauma for us in its own. So, that's really what I wanted to say, and thank you for listening.
It's a balance. It's a balance, like going along with evolution, and then also holding on to the jewels that you get from yesterday and from that experience that comes from yesterday. It's a balance, you know?
Hi, I'm Lauren. I just want to say a couple things. But like my mom said, I think our minds are more open. We have a lot more resources available to us. The internet, even though it has a good and bad, it's at our fingertips. There's so many things there. So we have the resources to recognize. And what I did from my own personal experience is I took the foundation that I was given. You know, everything wasn't perfect. There was a lot of things that could, you know, I mean, we can go, you know, back and forth with that, but you take the foundation and you take what worked and you use that and then you fix the other things. So, you know what I mean? I feel like I was given a really good foundation. I had hardworking parents. I grew up seeing two hardworking people in the household. You know what I mean? And I took that and that's what I built my foundation on for my family that I started on my own as an adult. So, you know, I took what worked for me and I tweaked the things that I felt like could have been different, could have been better. And then it also makes us human. We empathize when you get to that age with your parents. And I feel like we held our parents at this high regard. Oh, you know, they're 30 and 20 something, they know everything. And then when you get that age, you realize how much you don't know, how much you think you knew, how much you get, you know, how hard it is to raise and take care of a family. You know what I mean? So you start to empathize with them a lot more when you become an adult. It's like, okay, I see. They were stressed, these bills, because these bills is whooping my ass. You know what I mean? So as a 30-something-year-old, I understand and I empathize with my parents in that space. That's when I was younger, it was like, you know, you think they know everything, you held them in such high regards, but then you grow up and realize that they're human and that they're figuring it out as they go along. So you humanize them, and I think that connects us also, is just by empathizing with them and humanizing them, and then just bridging that gap from generation to generation. Like we try to do with therapy. I've done therapy to work on myself and want to be a better parent and do things in a different way. So I just think that, you know, these conversations are opening up that, and we have a lot more resources. I'm a lot more vocal with my son. I have a different relationship with my son. We're open, we speak about a lot of things, but that's because of the work that I've done and the resources that have been available that I've utilized. And we're able to have those conversations. And I think it's gonna get easier because now we're a lot more comfortable dealing with it and giving our children voices and opinions and raising them to be humans instead of who we want them to be or who we want to form them into. You know, respecting that they're going to be who they are and just honoring that and trying to, you know, direct them and give them, you know, you never really stray too far away from the morals and values that you're raised with. So I just feel like giving them, like I said again, the foundation is what starts it, and then you just kind of tweak it to your liking, and you take what you need and you leave what you don't, and you just go from there. You know what I mean? I think that makes the difference in how we're continuing it. And, you know, I work with a lot of kids, I manage people, and they're very much sticklers. They are not gonna work over their time, they're gonna take their breaks, like they demand things about their parents, you know what I mean? Yeah, their workplace is a lot different. They're gonna take their vacations, they're gonna take their days off, and sometimes the older generation kind of be like, oh, I'm taking all these days off, but they're more comfortable because they didn't do those things back then. They didn't utilize the things that we're more comfortable utilizing now. Now we speak up for our pay. You know what I mean? You ain't gonna pay me pennies. We working for what we worth. So it's just a lot more, getting more comfortable in who we are, what we have to offer. And even with the code switching thing, it's just like, I'm a code switch so much, but I'm still gonna be myself. If my hard work and my dedication can't get me there, I don't want it. You know, that's kind of how I look at it at this point, because I'm confident in what I bring to the table. So it's only so much I can do as far as that goes. But yeah, that's just kind of just pushing forward, keep pushing the needle forward. And these conversations are opening that up for us, so, yeah.
Absolutely, I love what you said. You said, I don't want to unless my hard work can get you there, right? You know, the old saying, I only want to eat what I, you know what the saying goes. But yeah, definitely, I agree. And I guess what I'm thinking just is how a lot of times, just in order to get into these spaces that we get into, we have to be twice as good. We have to work twice as hard, you know what I mean? Just to get into these spaces. So I don't want to say that's automatic, but a lot of times that's why we're there. It's because we did work twice as hard.
We have to be excellent to their mediocre. It's always
Come on, right? You know, a lot of times we were the 20 to the 10, so that's why we're there,
There's
right?
a lot of things, nepotism, all those things is what keeps these things in power play.
Absolutely.
It's a lot.
Absolutely. Before we wrap this up, go to the next topic, I just wanted to ask you, Chris, just in terms of social economics, you know, I said earlier, you know, what impact do you feel like that plays on the mental health, particularly in our community? Because I think it goes without saying that when you're in poverty, that gives a different mind frame. I know for me personally, when I was younger, I probably had a different mind frame than I have now with my financial stability, so definitely.
Yeah, it's absolutely a huge connection between those things. You think about what socioeconomics provides us: food, clothing, shelter, access to those resources, access to information and knowledge. You know, I think for many of us, we have to be at a certain place in terms of our socioeconomics and our security to be able to really take in information in places like what's being shared here today. Just as a quick aside, I want to just give a lot of props to the gentleman in the corner for what you shared. Immense credit to that. I think it connects a lot to socioeconomics, and it connects a lot to this entire umbrella of topics that we have. To be able to communicate what you did and talk about that change that you made, it's very huge. And I've seen a lot of people struggle in being able to make that change because they're so preoccupied with being able to survive in life versus learn how to thrive. And what you're talking about is how you set up that foundation for thriving. Like, immense credit for that. A lot of love for that. Yeah, and then just thinking about the idea of trauma and the idea of complex trauma, which in a really simple way of putting it is when you have one trauma compounded with another trauma, and then another trauma, and then another trauma. Socioeconomics can help provide resilience to that as well, the supports that you have, the access to certain resources that you have as well. So if you don't have those things in place, it just makes you more vulnerable. They can keep the cycle going and keep it all perpetuating. Yes, maybe it was.
Yeah. Before we kind of go to the next topic, two things I wanted to touch on that you had brought up is one, just about like mental health being a new concept, and you know, in our community at least. A lot of times for different reasons, you know, we want to touch on that in terms of, you know, different reasons, but I feel like what comes with that, you're right, it's like we're on a new frontier, right? In terms of like finding that intersection between, like I said, melanin and mental health, right? What does it look like for us, right? Our services and our issues and everything above isn't going to look like it's going to look like for everybody else, right? So I feel like that was a great point. And two, something that you brought up in terms of being like somebody from the 60s, you're right. I have a very particular experience as an 80s baby from Oakland. Very particular, right? You know. So I definitely feel like what comes with that is a lot of trauma, right? There's a lot of trauma that comes with what you said. How you know, my dad told me West Oakland used to be like Harlem. You know, he said it used to be black businesses. You know, you guys wanted to go out on a Friday. I see your dad say this, yeah. Oh, Jesus, at the same time, shit, yeah. You know, I heard it used to be, you know, you can go out, you know, speak easy bars, you know, West Oakland, all I know is Acorn Bottoms. You know, I don't know the West Oakland that my dad described to me, you know? And, you know, it's crazy to see the impact that like crack had, you know? Because I just came up, it was here, you know what I'm saying? I didn't necessarily see that transition from Oakland being this way to now just being kind of ravaged by violence and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So it's definitely, I appreciate you kind of giving me that, you know, your experience because, yeah, like I said, it's a lot there in terms of, you know, that transition that we made. Trying to think, there was one more thing I wanted to say about that, but I can't remember, so I'm gonna keep pushing. So, you know, on that same line, we were just talking about how it's going to look different for us, right? Us going to receive treatment. That's one thing that, like, you know, like the clients who I do work with, I feel like we have a particular, we have a particular rapport. Chief, you get a chance, you turn on that AC. Just a little bit. Yeah, it's a little bit. I ain't gonna lie. Then it's like a clutch shit. I'm gonna turn down the AC. Yeah, turn off the AC. You know, we come from people from a warm place, you know what I mean? I was trying to think it would get nitty. But now, back to it, I feel like, it's gonna look different for us. And like, I got a particular rapport with the people who I work with, right? Especially the people of my culture, you know what I'm saying? So we can have conversations that I can't have with other clients. You know, we can talk in ways that I can't speak with other clients, right? We can talk about stuff that I can't talk about with other clients. So there's that in terms of being able to say, you know what, I want a black therapist, right? Because in these other spaces, they allow them to pick. If somebody comes in and says, I want somebody of this gender, they're gonna go out their way to get somebody of this gender, right? If somebody comes in and says, oh, I'm of this community, of this sexuality, they're gonna go out their way to get, somebody of this community, of this sexuality. So I think it's important for us that we do have people who represent us, right? And that we are able to say, you know what, I don't want to just talk to Jane Doe, I want to talk to Jonelle, because he looks like me, right? That's important. That's important. Also, what's important though is others, because we're only 10%. Like we are gonna have, some of us are gonna have white, Asian, Mexican, indigenous, Indian, other therapists, right? So it's important that other people are able to provide culturally competent care. Culturally competent care. That was a tongue twister. Because they're gonna be serving our community too, right? So I kind of want to ask you a little bit about that, just in terms of, as a black therapist, do you feel, what's the importance you feel of someone asking for a black clinician, or somebody being able to have a black clinician versus having to work with, because I know me personally, as somebody who's been in therapy with somebody who wasn't black, and it made me understand why my black clients didn't want to be with somebody who wasn't black. I know how I get it now. So, your feelings around that, and then just in general, us receiving culturally competent care when we're not able to have somebody of, our own culture servicing us, right? Like I wanted a black dentist and have no black people in the whole company, so I had to go with, you know what I'm saying? Close as I can get, right? Just wanted to get your feelings on that.
I think it's extremely important representation, right? Access for black people to have access to black therapists, right? If you would have probably asked me maybe a few years ago, I'm gonna pause on that. So, when I worked at these different spaces, right? And this is when we were transitioning into like strict mental health, COVID. And even before that though, when I worked in the office a little bit, because my name is Daniel Cohen, so it can go either way. If you look at my name, you don't know if I'm black, right, or so I say that, right, because when people used to walk in and see me, and it was a black person, and they said, "Oh my God, are you black?" Like, and the look on their face, right? And then the automatic, like I just saw a sense of relief for them as well. And even it was funny too, even when we switched to telehealth, right? And then I'll pop on the screen like, "Oh my God, you black," right? And they would do that too. And I was asking for a black therapist. They said, we don't know. Or they said, just what Cheryl was saying, like, when we ask for things, right, get the runaround, right? Or well, maybe we'll see what we have. But also, it's only 4% of us, right? So there's not a lot, and so it's really important for us to be in these spaces and to show representation that there is such thing as black therapy, right? And for us to normalize the experience for me. Like I said, I love working with black people. And I don't have a problem with saying that. And I don't have a problem saying that I want to prioritize that, right? And so it's important for us to be able to hold that and to sit with that, and for people in our community to be able to ask for a black therapist, because we are going to be able to understand your experiences differently. Yeah, black people are not a monolith. I'm not saying that at all, right? We all have different experiences, we come from different walks of life, but it's just something in regards to how we relate and how we understand. Though we, again, may have grown up differently, I'm just able to hear what you're telling me differently, right? I'm not pathologizing you because you said you're doing X, Y, and Z, right? I'm normalizing your experience because I hear it with different ears and I see it with a different lens. And so that's why I think it is extremely important for black people to have access to black therapists, right? And I could be a little biased and say, I feel like you might get a better experience, but that's just me. But at the same time, I'm probably just speaking for myself, because I think I'm an incredible therapist. But at the end of the day, you know what? I had to come to the realization that if you don't have a Black therapist, it's important for you to have a therapist who is, I don't really like to use the word culturally competent, because I feel like a white person could do some training and be like, oh, I'm culturally competent now. Not quite, right? And so I feel like that kind of caps it out, or it gives it a ceiling. I like to say cultural humility. Someone who is well-versed, someone who is open to continuing to learn about the experiences of others, right? And so that's what that means to me, that you don't know it all because you got these letters behind your name. You don't want to act like you know it all. You're open to understanding and hearing what someone is telling you, right? Not hearing it and then trying to flip it, right, and reverse it. That's not what you're supposed to do. So if you can get a good black therapist, right? I think the experience is like no other, but if not, at least someone who's has cultural humility, and someone who you feel can really hear your experience as a Black woman or as a Black man. But we just need more of us. We need more access, and we need more of these spaces so you guys know that we're out here, right? Because we are unicorns. Let's just say that we are unicorns at the end of the day. But I think just by us educating ourselves and educating the community, and also moving away from the stigma of mental health and the taboo-ness of wanting to go see a therapist, right? It doesn't have to be when something gets to the extreme or something, right? Let's put some stuff in place. You can go to therapy if things is going okay, right? It doesn't necessarily always have to be your problem, right? You can just go to therapy to get a different perspective, or just get some support, or get some emotional tools, some stuff in your toolbox to be able to deal with the navigations of the world. Because at the end of the day, there might not be anything in particularly going on with you, but you are still a Black person in America. So you are still inevitably going to have some experiences, right? So us individually and us collectively as well. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, Danny, something you said earlier, it turns out people get surprised. I remember when I was first hired at E.B. Hirsch, the first day sitting in the front lobby, waiting for Tiffany, waiting for the program director to come out. And, she told me, like, you want to get water, just, come back to the staff room, get water, and, go back and take a seat, wait for me, I'll be out there. So at some point, I'm thirsty, I drink a lot of water, so I'm thirsty, let me go back and, go back there. So I opened the door and went to where the receptionists were. And the lady in the front said, oh, wait, what are you doing? Clients aren't allowed back here. And she kind of scared me, because I'm like, dang, I just scared her, she scared me. And, somebody jumped in and was like, nah, I think he a new hire. She was like, with the dress? I'm like, he a new hire? I'm sitting right there too. I'm like, yeah. I am. She's like, okay. And then went back to the front desk. So, I having experiences like that, where not only are people surprised, but it's almost as if because we have our culture, because we have braids or dreads or, whatever we might have, whatever natural hairstyle we might have, that makes us less competent or less intelligent, Yeah. And then you also touched on just, how a lot of times we're able to see things through a different lens. I've been in consultation groups where we talked about, certain people, our people rather, being in our neighborhoods, and they'll say, yeah, he's talking about he always has to look over his shoulder, and, every time he crosses the street, he keeps looking, and, I feel like he's over vigilant, or he just lives somewhere where it's violent, it's crazy, But they might not have the lens to see that. That's where the pathologizing comes in. Pathologizing is when you're making a mental health issue, and it's not a mental health issue. It's more so I'm in this environment or I'm in this situation issue, So definitely, I feel like you touched on some some super important points there. Chris, oh yes, please do. Good, okay. He said, I don't need it.
Relentless misperception in like a societal space, you know? We talk about the stigma about mental health, but when you think about going into a psychological space where you're getting help with, trauma and everything, when you experience that misperception that can be a danger to your life physically in a societal space, perhaps the reluctance to go into this psychological state, which is so vulnerable, and experience possibly a psychological violence or being seen through a filter of all these like negative tropes and not being understood or received authentically. That myself personally, white therapist for the most part, and having experienced pretty severe trauma in terms of not being seen and the whole huge, but perhaps my point being is that the stigma about mental health perhaps is connected to
It gets further by that experience.
the violence, the tropes that you're filtered, the tropes that you're being seen through, and having reluctance to be in a psychological space where you're so vulnerable, where you have so much vulnerability. I just wanted to throw that out. And then I also, we're not a monolith, like you said, like the generic perceptions can be so damaging. And so that, like, I don't think I would ever go to a white therapist now because of some stuff that has happened. And it's really traumatizing not to be seen, and to be criminalized and all these other things that can happen. So, yeah,
Thank you for saying that. I have a lot of clients by the time they're ready to meet, it might be later on in life. They'll be like, yeah, I tried therapy earlier on, I went and talked to the lady and, they basically, and just like you said, they had a psychological trauma, right? They were invalidated in a way where they felt like it did more damage than it did do good. And they're like, why are they doing this? Like, well, why would I want to do this again, right? It takes for them to go through whatever they go through to, feel like, well, maybe I'll give it another shot, maybe years down the line. So you're right. A lot of times that can be a hindrance to our community, even feeling more open to removing that stigma, right? Yeah, that was a great point. And, not only the stigma, but other issues that prevents us from getting, mental health care, like accessibility, right? Some of us are gonna have Kaiser healthcare, some of us don't. I used to work at Eastmont Wellness Center in Highland. A lot of people don't even know they can go talk to somebody at Eastmont for real, So a lot of times it's not accessibility, it's not the information not put out there, and it's not affordability, I wanted to ask you, Chris, about that. How do you feel like, in terms of the numbers showing that, Black people, Black men specifically, receive less mental health care than anybody else, in the world? How do you feel like that's impacted by accessibility and affordability?
I think it's impacted greatly by those things. Just thinking about some of the stuff that we talked about here today, if not all the things that we talked about here today, there's a connection there with that. The thing that sticks out to me the most in terms of the accessibility piece, aside from the obvious socioeconomics that can get in the way with that location, it's going back to what we just talked about, the idea of being able to have a therapist that you can identify with, that you can feel comfortable with, that you can speak to. It is very true in the sense that we are unicorns in the field, and I think that's an unfortunate thing. And with more of this awareness and the more people that are talking about this, the more people that get into actually doing therapy, providing the service, hopefully that can be something that can help to address some of that. There's also this additional burden. I can't remember who it was that was talking about it, but it was the idea of the gift and the curse of resilience. And I think directly when Shell's bringing up this topic of accessing mental health care, that's something we have to be able to take a look at as well too. The resilience that we've had, the resilience that we've shown, is a huge part of being able to survive in life. But there is, after the survival has been achieved, or if it's been achieved for long enough, hopefully there can be a movement towards thriving. Therapy doesn't just have to be about there being a major crisis or a major problem. It can be something to help build you up, to do different things, take on new challenges. So much of the stigma around mental health there's something wrong with you. Someone's making a comment about there not being a division between retarded and what have you back in the day. Some of that stuff still persists. We still carry that with us. And it's hard to imagine that not being an issue, considering how difficult it is for us to be vulnerable in these spaces in general, and to talk about this stuff. I myself too, like a lot of people who've gone in to either receiving therapy or working in a space with other therapists, you are definitely exposed to how difficult it can be to find those connections with other people.
You know, it's amazing when we talk about mental health. Going back to when I was growing up, I grew up in the era where they had the sign that said color and white. When you rode the bus, you paid your money, got off, went to the back and sat down. You go in back doors. And I bring that up because I was in Vietnam, and there was a lot of things that went down. I went through mental health for about 5 years, talking to a psychiatrist because of the issue, but then I didn't realize that growing up, there was a lot of trauma that I went through, or my family went through, you know. Homemade bombs being set on the front door. I didn't understand all of that, but going through the psychological things, trauma that I dealt with. This is perfect. This is beautiful, man. That you guys are putting something together like this. It's well made. We don't realize the trauma that we carry that has built up over the years. I mean, layers and layers and layers. But being able to talk about it, you get rid of those layers. So I just like to say that this is great, and I'm thankful that I was invited to join in and answer some of the questions, look at some of the things that are happening. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Something I was thinking about, I don't know what you said, it made me think about it. It was just about how we have therapy, of course. That's an obvious way to improve on your mental health. But as Black people, historically, we've also had other avenues for being able to work on our mental health, right? It hasn't just been therapy, obviously, for obvious reasons. We talked about accessibility, affordability, stigma. But there's other ways, right? That I feel that's what makes us special. We use community, a lot of times to deal with our mental health, right? In particular, we use spirituality a lot of times to deal with our mental health, right? There's a lot of people who, regardless of what your faith or your belief is, you might use, growing up, I've seen my mom and a lot of my aunties use the church, as a way, to deal with their mental health. Now, I remember when I was in grad school and I was working on my capstone. It actually was my Jewish, I don't know what they call it, the person who's over your capstone. Can't remember off the top of my mind right now. But anyway, he was super cool. And he actually had a lot of research on that. He had done a lot of research on how historically Black people use spirituality to cope with their mental health, right? Or cope with our mental health, rather, right? And I just felt like that was dope. He gave me a lot of stuff to read. And it all rung true to me. I mean, that's true. We do use our spirituality in order to make it through, a lot of different situations. So I wanted to ask you, Tay, as a gospel singer, somebody who, definitely, talks a lot about our spirituality. How do you feel like, us as a community, how do you feel like we use our spirituality to better cope with our mental health? By the way, Tay is pushing the 31-day practical, emotional, better way to pray.
All right. So just not even just being a singer, but being a minister within the church context, in multiple spaces. Like I see a lot of people, I'm not a clinician per se, but a lot of people will come for counsel and, you know what I mean, and all of that stuff. And I think a lot of times people just tell people to pray. And I'm a huge advocate of prayer, Pray as much as you can. However, there's other things like in the Bible and in church that we can do. There's counseling, you know what I mean? There's having conversations. Like one thing that I can say that I saw within the context of my family, we grew up in church heavy, we had family meetings, right? And my dad would call the family meetings. So that taught me, even if we didn't have family meetings all the time, that taught me to talk about stuff, to have a conversation about things, right? Now, maybe we all got whooped afterwards, and, I'm not saying that was the best thing, but, it is what it is. But it did teach me, to talk about stuff and at least have a conversation. And I'm like the youngest of my family, and I have like a lot of sisters, so I feel like I have like 7 mamas. And so they're really bossy. And I had to learn to be comfortable with using my own voice. And I feel like since I've started like singing more, the more I came out, like the more I expressed myself through song and through that creativity, it helped me to develop a larger, or a bigger confidence, greater confidence to be able to, oh, that's real loud, more confidence to even be able to, the mic doesn't like me today, so we're just gonna do this, it's fine. But it gave me the ability to be able to be more confident in speaking up about anything, whether it was mental health, whether it was about boundaries. And it's something you said, you was like, this generation is, they're not gonna work more, they're gonna ask for more money. That's me. My friends tell me, I'm serious. They're like, man, you only been there such you ask for more money? Yes. You know why? Because somebody else came here and they got more money. Or even when it comes to, okay, you're gonna hold it for me, all right. But even when it comes to singing in different environments and stuff, like in the church, they don't necessarily tell you to go be a part of a mental health, organization or a meeting, or that's not something that they did. They do it more now, but it wasn't before. So one of the things that I was able to do was write a song that spoke to issues dealing with any type of struggle, whether you struggled mentally, emotionally, whether you dealt with suicide or depression or fear or anxiety. And the thing is, you guys, it didn't even start off as, oh, I'm gonna write a song. It really started off like I would start humming. I told you something loud. I would start humming, and then I started putting these lyrics. And there was another major gospel artist who I started singing a part of this song to. And they was like, that's too heavy, that's too much, right? Mind you, this is within the context of, gospel music entertainment. Like I'm thinking like, oh, they're gonna be thrilled. No. It was actually more so discouraging. But I kept going, and I was like, man, but I think that this is something. And it was just like, the words that came to my mind was, you're like an internal bleeder, can't see your pain, but it can silently kill you. So deeply wounded, but don't say a thing, right? And then it was like, you're like an internal bleeder, can't see your pain, but it can silently kill you. Suicidal, depressed, but you won't say a thing. And I sang that. And that's what was discouraged. But if I hadn't learned to have my own voice, then I would have been like, you know what? I'm going to just leave that to the side. But I didn't do that. And the whole time that I was there, it took me to write and come up even with the song. I'm thinking, oh, this is for other people, because I don't work with kids who are severely emotionally disturbed. They be trying to kill themselves. They're jumping out of windows. You gotta grab them so they snatch knives out of their hands, you know what I mean? Grab them from jumping out the window, grab them from jumping in front of the car. So that was re-traumatizing for me. I didn't even realize when these ideas for this song that I didn't know was a song came to my mind, it was a way for me to even release all the trauma that I had experienced from trying to help people who had experienced trauma, not including the trauma that I had growing up. You know what I'm saying? But in the church, they don't necessarily do that. However, there are people who will start seeking and asking questions. And so what I started doing was, I'm talking to the people who asking questions that we told not to ask. I'm talking to the people who are going into spaces that we're not really told to go into. You know what I mean? And because I had my own mental health battle and I was vocal about it, it could be very embarrassing, right? to tell somebody you're depressed and you're suicidal when you're the person that people are going to talk about stuff. So within the context of the church, if you are vocal about it, then you kind of look bad. So I had to be like, you know what? I don't care who my family is. I don't care what people see me as in the church, whether I'm a minister or man, whatever. It doesn't matter. This is what's really happening in my life. And when I started to talk about that, it started making other people feel okay to talk about it. Then boom, now in the church, we have these little conversations. It could just be a text thread. It could just be a DM on social media. It could just be a phone conversation, right? And then we started writing songs. Then I met somebody else who was dealing with the same thing. Let them hear the song, boom. All of a sudden, you're like, man, I dealt with that too. So the creativity that I feel like people have, whether it's poetry, whether it's mute, like a song where you're not rapping, or whether you're rapping or whatever. It's so many different things you can do, or graphics, or it's so many things within entertainment that you can do to express what's going on. I had people create all of these visuals. They was like, man, I dealt with that too. Can I create a visual? And now we have this whole community of people who are talking about mental health, but in a different way. You know what I mean? Where people are creating art based off of their struggles and stuff like that. And then what does that do? Open up a conversation. So I feel like from the context of church, for me, because my spirituality is I'm connected with Jesus, so that's how I identify. In that context, it's like that music helped me to be able to, number one, talk about all of these things, also find other people who were dealing with the same thing, and then allow them to feel even more comfortable. You feel me? See, I told you, yeah, allow them to feel more comfortable. But yeah, so I think I'm done, or was that cut off, or keep going? Or
No, you keep going. I'm sorry. I think this one was better. I ain't even gonna hold you. I think that one was worse. But you feel free.
Yeah, no, but man, just whatever your connection is like to God, I think that it's important to be able to be vulnerable and be okay with however you may look to other people. You know what I'm saying? Like, because at the end of the day, if you talking to God about what you're dealing with and what you're going through, then only what He thinks matters anyway. It don't matter if people feel like you crazy or you're, I don't want to say sorry, I don't know say that no more. But it doesn't matter what other people may think. It's about you being honest with God. In this moment, you know what? And I'm gonna just be real candid. Like when my father died, I really became like, I had a lot more suicidal thoughts. Like, and one thing Shell taught me about was like passive or active or sleeping or doing. There you go. Okay, one of them. I'm not pushing y'all, so I just be like, well, what's that called? And so I realized that, man, I actually been having these passive suicidal thoughts. I didn't even notice what that was, but nobody really addressed it.
So real quick, just to explain real quick. So what most people think of in terms of suicidal ideation is like active suicidal ideation. That's like somebody planning to like kill themselves, they got the intent. But then there's also like passive suicidal ideation. That's not like thinking of a plan to kill yourself. You're just having that feeling of like, man, I don't feel like being here. If I went to sleep and didn't wake up, I'd be cool with it, right? That's passive suicide.
Yeah, thank you for the definition, because I wouldn't know what to tell y'all. But even having a person who, you know, we talk about God or whatever, and then I can kind of go to them like, hey, what is this particular thing? I'm seeing now that there's more people within churches, within all of these different faith-based organizations that will talk about it now. So I'm like, oh, please, can we talk about it more? Oh, yes, can we have a conversation? Oh, you know what I mean? And promoting it. And I feel like me becoming more comfortable, even as an artist, a musical artist, that really did help me to be okay with having these conversations in environments where people shunned you or made you feel like something is wrong with you because you're talking about this. Something is wrong with you because you're experiencing this, and it's not. You know? So I talked a lot, so I'm done.
I mean, you hit on so many relevant points, from like again how we can use our spirituality to cope with mental health, to how we can use our art, right? Not only the visual arts, but also just different forms of entertainment to kind of promote and advocate for mental health. And that's something you always do, right? It's definitely something that I always appreciate about Tay. You're gonna use your platform to push the mental health on people, and I definitely appreciate that. I wanted to ask, one thing that we were kind of talking about a little earlier. in terms of black men receiving the least amount of therapy. I want to ask you, Chris, what do you think we can do to increase the likelihood, specifically, that black men, give therapy a shot?
Well, I think through conversations like this and having this information disseminated out throughout the community.
Say it again.
I'm thinking through more conversations like this and having the information disseminated out into the community. The best way to be able to combat the stigma is to have conversations about this stuff, to normalize it. Even for me being following Jesus, like our friend we were saying, it's surprising to me even here in those spaces how difficult it is to have these talks. That saddens me a great deal. And I don't think this is necessarily a fair thing for every individual to take on, but if you can, it'd be fantastic. I know for myself it's a struggle as well. But we all need to be advocates for this. We need to stand up for one another for this stuff. We need to show people through our vulnerability, through our acceptance of each other, through our love of each other, that it's okay to get into that space. I definitely grew up in an environment where it was like, don't cry. Only emotions is happy, sad, are you hungry? That was pretty much it. And to do anything in addition to that, you were looked at, you were made to feel like you were less than, that you didn't have worth. It's through the conversation, it's through the community, it's through normalizing this stuff. We don't have to operate in the same way as we've seen generations before us. We don't have to suffer in those same ways. Hopefully we have enough supports around us, enough of a foundation to where we can do some of this additional thriving that I'm talking about. It still surprises me too, like our colleague was saying over here, when I have a black person come to me in therapy, there's a look of relief. There's like this weight potentially can be lifted through this relationship. And more people need to be exposed to this. More people need to know how it can benefit. I wouldn't be able to be here today if it wasn't for the support of mental health, for the support of therapists. I'm noticing myself as we're going through this panel, and everyone's talking about stuff, a lot of shit's coming up for me as I'm hearing this. Every one of these experiences are things that have touched me very closely. I'm thinking about just the thing that Shel was talking about, being identified as a client. One of the places that was very important for me to work when I graduated school was to go into the juvenile justice system and to give back to a population that I felt very close to in my youth for various reasons. And the first day that I was at the facility, and I was getting escorted out by one of my colleagues, who in retrospect I'm thinking, well, he was white. So as we're walking out the facility, I'm about 23, 24 years old, they weren't gonna let me out. They told my colleague, because he's a therapist, you can't take the criminals out, however he used to say it. I forget the terminology, but it wasn't kids, it wasn't something kind. It was a systematic definition that I since shed because it was so difficult to be a part of that place. But just that moment, that was really heavy for me to have to deal with that. And I wouldn't have been able to have gone through that experience to make it to DB Hirsch, to get to where I am now doing this work now for probably 15, 16 years, something like that. It wasn't always about me having to go see a therapist because I was in a state of crisis. I needed to have that support at times so I can be able to do more for the community and to bring myself up. There's an empowerment that can come from this. You don't have to go into therapy because you're in a place of, I don't mean this, but just to kind of go with the vibe, a quote unquote weakness. You can go to therapy out of a place of strength. You can go because you want to improve your family and things for your children. So that's kind of thing for me, and how can we get more people involved in this? We need to be passionate about it, we need to show that it's important, we need to champion it.
Absolutely, thanks,
some of the issues that we just talked about in terms of black men, I definitely want to, also talk about some issues that are more pertinent to black women, as, there are definitely certain specific issues that kind of relates to, the queen, so to speak. Historically speaking, a lot of research shows that black women receive the worst care in medical settings, from the peripartum time period to just ongoing regular PCP care to other environments, whether it be different experiments like the Tuskegee experiment, or whether it be other situations that happen throughout history, where a lot of times black women receive, again, the worst care, if not deliberately being poison out of experimentation. I kind of wanted to, just ask, as somebody who's worked in the medical system, how do you feel the care that Black women receive, and lack of care that Black women receive, impacts the way they see the medical system?
Yes, absolutely. This is all history, right? And so it goes back to the 1800s and the medical exploitation of Black women, right? It was an medical experiment, where Black women went through surgery, C-sections, and they were not given anesthesia for it because they were assumed to feel less pain than white women. And so it just dates back to stuff like that, and even now, right? I know a lot of people in my life personally and as a professional as well that I've talked to that, and me, my experience personally in regards to going to the doctor and telling them something is wrong, something is going on, and they're not hearing me, right? And they're not acknowledging it. And it's because we're seen to be stronger, right? And we're seen to be resilient, and we're seen to be all these things, right? But you're really not hearing me when I'm telling you that I'm in pain, right? And so it's a systemic thing, it's a history thing, and again, it's us being seen as less human than our white counterparts, right? I mean, it goes all the way back to us being seen as 1/3 human, right? So it's history here. So it's us understanding our history, knowing our history, and then understanding that within these different settings, right? So it's a huge gap in the medical system for Black women, and that honestly, it's a big part of. I used to want to do medical. I used to want to be a pediatrician. I used to want to go into the system, but I felt like we need more of us, yes, but I felt like I couldn't really change such a fucked up system. Right? Excuse my language. I'm sorry, but it's really how I felt, and so me being, a psychologist, and I worked, for youth in a hospital, and so a lot of my clients, they would have their PCP obviously at the same hospital, and sometimes they would come see me after that. They're like, yeah, I just came from seeing my whoever, PCP, OBGYN, whoever else, and I just didn't feel heard. I didn't feel validated. I didn't feel listened to. I was telling them that I was in pain, and they were trying to tell me I wasn't, or trying to tell me or convince me that it wasn't that bad, right? And then send me home with a Tylenol or something like that, right? Or send me home with something that I'm not asking for. And so it really does impact our willingness to seek help, right? And to seek care. That's why, when I got a PCP before, for the first time with Black women, I was excited, right? And I lost coverage and all that, so I didn't get to see her for that long. But it's just a different feel when you walk into the room and you feel validated, right? And you're seen and treated as a human first. Because yes, we are Black men, Black women in here, but we are human first and foremost, right? But it just goes to show how much stigma and how much we are dehumanized as human beings, right? And so Black women in general, like I said, we receive worse care, so we may not feel comfortable 9 times out of 10 going to the hospital. I could just bet on my hand how many people in here, a handful of people, or not anybody, like hospitals, right? I mean, nobody don't like hospitals in general, right? But just the experiences, that we've had, we can be hesitant to go seek the care that we need, because when we do seek it, right, there's barriers there and there's gaps there. And so, dealing with that, and then dealing with infant mortality, and then the rates, right? I'm probably jumping ahead to the question in regards to that, but
No, that is a question.
yeah, Black women, and then dealing with medical systems, and then, we deal with, the death rates, right? And then Black women dealing with postpartum, depression, that's a whole other thing as well. And really understanding what that is. I know so many people, in my personal life, and also as a therapist who didn't even know that they was dealing with postpartum, didn't even know what it was, right? And what it looks like, and it's a real thing, and it's scary. I personally am not a mother yet, but I've worked with a lot of women who are pregnant, and I did a group one time, a BIPOC mothers group, for women who are pregnant and postpartum, and right now I work for a nonprofit in San Francisco, and it's a brand new program called BBHI, Black Birth and Health Individual, and it's for us to provide community and care and access and resources to perinatal and postpartum women. Because of the disparities in the healthcare system, because of a lack of understanding, connection, access, resources, and all of those things. So we have to put these things into place because it's not readily available and given to us, right? We already are at a disadvantage because of, racism, because of institutionalism and all of those things. So we have to put these things into place and resources, but we also have to know that they're there, right? And so that's why these spaces, these panels, these talks, and these communities are important. But yeah, it just goes back to history and all these experiments that people have no idea even happened, right? I mean, going through an experiment where you're experimenting on without anesthesia, right? Because you think that I don't experience as much pain as my white counterpart, right? Because of the things that we were forced to go through. Nobody volunteered to go through, say, slavery. Nobody volunteered these things, but, we made it out. And so I'm going a whole soapbox on that. But, those are just some of the things we need to educate ourselves about in regards to understanding, why we may hesitate to seek care, right? But it's important, and I want to just at least leave this message why it's on my brain that there is so much power in our healing. And we need to actively heal. It's a revolutionary act, in my opinion, to seek therapy and to heal, right? And to get these resources and want better for yourself than the cards that was dealt to us and the cards that were given. So if you see it as a revolutionary act, more so than just like, I might or I might not, I think you'll start to think about it differently, right? Because you're actively saying to yourself, I want to change how I think, how I feel, how I behave, how I operate, how I'm in relationship with whoever, right? My family dynamics, my upbringing. You can't change the things that you were born into, but you can change the present and then how you go from there, just like David was saying earlier, right? You couldn't change what you were born into, right? But you have the choice to change what family comes from you and then also how you operate.
Yeah, that's something that I don't think that in our community, at least the men, I don't think that we can quite caught up yet in terms of awareness around the whole peripartum issue. It's something that's real. I'll be honest with you, I only became familiar with it as a clinician. I didn't realize that it was at such a high clip and that, it's natural to have biological changes when you're going through, a physical, biological process, such as birth of a child, right? It's natural to have, your hormones, get affected by this and et cetera, and et cetera. So it's definitely that, something that people like I said, more, not just black men, but men in general, there has to be a lot more research around that. Not just that, but also other issues as well that, affect women at a higher rate in terms of like child abuse. There's a lot of different issues that are kind of, like I said, there's certain caveats that really affect black women at a higher clip. And you touched on a lot of that.
And I know that was another question, but I know we can.
It's all good, because I can hear somebody say something.
But I wouldn't honestly say that childhood abuse or sexual abuse affects just me being a clinician, and I've seen kids, teens, young adults, and all across the spectrum from 3 to 8 years old. But I would say that it's talked about more and it's brought up more and it's acknowledged more in regards to women dealing with childhood sexual abuse, but it actually occurs with men more than we think, to be complete. And I just did not want to skip over that. And it may not be as overt and blatant as a lot of the experiences that women and young girls have, but it actually does happen a lot and quite frequently with men. And it may be more seen as, and I've heard a lot of this from my personal life as well, is like friends that I've had, like, oh yeah, like, you know, and I had my first experience when I was 9 or 10. Yeah. And you know, they'll say it, but then at the time it was like, oh yeah, he was doing that, or yeah, whatever, with an older lady or something like that. And that's abuse. That is not normal. We should not be normalizing that. But the way we talk about it in our community, it depends on the age, maybe like when you like maybe 13, 14, like, yeah, you was with an older lady, it's like a badge of honor in a sense, right? But that's manipulation and that's abuse. And so I think I've heard a lot of stories personally, but also as a therapist where that has come up. And yeah, I just wanted to not end this conversation and end it on a note where it happens more with women. It's just talked about more. Yeah, and it may be more blatant and overt, but it happens a lot in men. And but it's also the double standard and the shame that may come around a man saying that he was sexually assaulted or abused, right? It's not seen as taken as serious, but it's really a thing that we shouldn't ignore that. We should talk about that more.
And even if research does show that maybe a higher percentage, doesn't mean that's not happening to men, it's not happening to little boys.
Absolutely, right.
So yeah, I see we're up against time, so I definitely, kind of consolidated a few of the questions. But I just want to thank everybody. Please just get a round of applause for everybody, here for coming out there. I really appreciate people, and I just appreciate you guys coming and just for us to be able to have this discussion. Tay, like I said, as Gospel said, she's gonna sing the song that she was describing earlier around mental health, just to wrap it on up. Before we do that, I want to give a huge thanks. Shout out to Chi in the back there. You feel me? The Berkeley Library is where she works, and she was the one who, kind of pitched the idea with me. So I definitely want to give a shout out. She's obviously everything's set up here. Due to Chi, and she just allowed us to be in this space here today. Definitely been kind. Like I told her before, we need to do this at least once a year or something, So definitely just want to get a thank you out. Not only to Chi, but again, all my panel members, man, I super appreciate the different words of, again, just from all of you guys saying, so much up here that was relatable to everybody. Even again, also in the audience, everybody kind of just giving their perspective, and as we would say, come together like love, right? I just felt like it was a rich conversation. It was something that was fruitful, and again, just like we've been kind of saying, the more of these conversations we have, more building we have. Like I like to always say, fellowship leads to organizing is how we build, right? So definitely, again, just want to say thank you, and you needed Chi to play the. Nah, you just want to sing a cappella? Okay, do your thing.
Alright, so the title of the song is God Sees You, and it is available on all music platforms. So. You're like an internal bleeder. Can't see your pain, but it can silently kill ya. So deeply wounded, but don't say the thing. Too afraid of what the people may say a thing. So you just sit there and you suffer in silence. Your pride won't let you just uncover your secret. Don't wanna look weak in your image, it ain't worth losing. So you just act as if it's nothing happening. And ooh, God sees you. Ooh. kill ya. Suicidal, depressed, but you won't say a thing. Too afraid of what the people may say or think. You feel alone even though the people surround you. Popping pills every night even though you know that can't solve it. The emotional pain, it just seems way too heavy. Your mind is racing, wanna scream, somebody help me! And ooh, ooh, God sees you. Ooh, ooh, God hears you. Ooh, God loves you. Oh, these type of people sit right under our noses. We don't find out till we're on IG scrolling. We post a few memes, but then it keeps on happening. Something's gotta change, we gotta start talking and telling the truth without the fear of judgment. Gotta come together and really start loving and heal these people cause they slowly dying. Help them believe that their life is worth living. And ooh, ooh, God sees you. Ooh, ooh, God sees you. Ooh, God loves you. Ooh, I'm praying into this suicide dreaming. We're losing people too soon, they're cutting and bleeding. They think no one cares, so I wrote this song to tell you, my God, He cares and He can heal you. We say, ooh, ooh, God sees you. Ooh, ooh, God hears you. Ooh, God loves you. You.
Like you said, you stream it anywhere, available anywhere. Like I said, I always appreciate saying that she's not just a gospel singer. She'll talk about life issues, talk about mental health, and try to bring that lens, from the church, but touching on real life, issues. So, again, definitely want to support that. She had a book here today. If you guys want to support that. Got some Chinese medicine balls, little mental health weekends, nothing too deep. But again, just thank everybody for coming.